we dive too deep on into anything, I want to thank you again for having us here. For those out there that don't know, first episode we had Renee Brandell on, and these guys were kind enough to let us do the podcast here. So appreciate you having us back for round 2 and shooting it with you guys.
Anytime you guys want to use it again, feel free to.
I will take you up on that offer. Well, guys, before we dive into anything as it relates to 64, like I mentioned, you guys have interesting backgrounds before starting this company.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about what you were doing and how it led up to what you're building now. Can you both share a little bit more about what initially sparked your interest in technology and entrepreneurship, and what that career path has looked like for the both of you?
Yeah. So I can go first, and then Chris can follow. For me, I think computer science and technology has always been a thing that I somehow got into when I was like 3 or 4. Like, sounds crazy, but I remember when I was young, my dad used to kind of turn on the computer for me and let me play games on it. And I went from that to like trying to figure out how to break into those games and hack. And that's where it all started. I think when I was around 12, I was already doing freelancing. I was doing a lot of like graphic design, like quick versions of like early versions of like website design and website building. So went from a designer to an engineer, and over the years I just kept building on it. But yeah, that was mostly how I got into it. What about you?
Yeah, no. Back in middle school when fidget spinners started becoming a thing, nobody had there was a lot of popularity on Instagram for people buying fidget spinners, but there was no supply from China, and so a friend of mine was just like spinning a fidget spinner, and he's like, if I had a 3D printer, this would be so much better. And I was like, well, I have one. So I started manufacturing these like fidget spinners, and like assumed the entire school was just like using my fidget spinners all day. And like I even got suspended because like there was just so much people were so busy fidgeting with their fidget spinners all day that I got in trouble. And so I just really loved like products and making people happy with just caring deeply about their experience. Like they would break down and what have you, and I'd like go back to my 3D printer, build them a new one. But now we're doing the same thing with software. Yes. And so it just all feels like one continuation of just building a product, giving it to customers, seeing their experience with it, and making them happy. I agree.
That's interesting. I can't say I was expecting either of those answers. Hacking at 3 years old and
not 3, but getting into it and then hacking at like 10 or 12. But yeah. Yeah.
Then from fidget spinners to what you guys are doing now, I can't say we had the same issue with fidget spinners at my school, but it sounds like you guys are onto something. Appreciate you guys covering that. And I know you've been involved in multiple startups. I'm wondering from your guys' perspective, a misconception that comes from a lot of founders when it comes to early stage building. What do you think most people miss out on?
That's a great question. Startups are hard fundamentally, right? Like you're tackling problems that either haven't been solved before, or you're going into like really competitive markets with like a new solution. So in that case, I think a lot of early stage like companies and a lot of early stage founders just like kind of miss out on some of it. Like they build things too prematurely without trying to understand if it actually solves the customer's problems or not.
Yeah.
And I've seen that a lot. Like a lot of people like just would spin up solutions. They would like spin up like a product and then expect people to just magically use it, but that's not how it works. In our case, we started off as a consulting agency to some extent. So we would go out and solve a customer's problem. Then over the period of like 3 to 4 months, we really deeply try to understand the problem.
Yeah.
And that's when we actually started productionizing it. And I think that was the right approach, which I feel like a lot of like early stage founders miss out on.
Totally. That kind of reminds me of a book I was reading called The Lean Startup by Steve Blank, where he's talking about just how the most fundamental thing is to go out and try to identify those problems first, and then come up with a minimal viable product, and go from there. So it sounds like you guys went about things the right way.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised with how many people actually miss out on that.
Yeah.
And it's such a core part of like the startup ecosystem, and it's like a pretty common saying too.
Yeah.
But like again and again, we meet startups who build an entire product and like nobody's using it. Totally. And we've actually done those mistakes in the past few startups too.
Yeah.
So
this is like our fifth one.
You do a few reps of these and you realize, okay, I think this is one of those things which you don't understand at first, but once you've done a few reps and you understand, like that's when you actually start understanding like how to fundamentally approach startups as a whole.
Definitely. Yeah, I think people can get caught up in what they think is a cool product or solution rather than first seeing if it's actually something that's a must-have versus, what would just be a nice add-on. So I think you kind of hit it on the head there. And, wondering too, just, what you guys think is the biggest shift in terms of AI entrepreneurship from the time you started building to now we're in 2025, just what's changed?
I think a lot of things have changed. Like, I remember when I first started building things, I would spend hours just like reading documentation, and shipping software used to take forever.
Yeah.
Now you can have a lean team and build a really good product. I think our jobs as engineers has kind of evolved from just writing code to becoming kind of like product managers or like product engineers almost. So things have changed in that aspect. I think now you can move faster. You need less capital to kind of approach problems. It's very easy to build an MVP, but it's surprisingly really hard to turn that MVP into a production system. I think that is still something which requires a lot of effort, and that's where you actually start needing capital. But I think, fundamentally, we are moving into a place where like building software is getting easy. At least building the MVP is getting easy, but taking that to production is still pretty hard.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like one thing I'm seeing too is just like the harp on rapid iteration speed too, and just continually making changes to the product you're working on. So I think that's a fair call out. And I don't even think I've asked you guys this before, but why the name 64, and like what's the hidden meaning behind? Is it you guys can do 64 push-ups in a row, or?
Well, we're broke and the name was cheap.
Yeah, it was a $150 domain.
No way. Okay.
I think I had $500 in my bank account, so.
He's still only paying back.
Hey, it's got a good ring to it. I like it. Well, I guess more in terms of what 64 is solving today. Like you guys publicize it as like the orchestration layer for company and people intelligence. Can you describe what that actually means and how you guys differ from other tools out there like Perplexity being one of the most well known?
So the way we approach this orchestration layer, our fundamental thesis on this is every company has kind of like their own bespoke use cases of enrichments, and kind of going from whether that is finding somebody or enriching them, or they have users coming in now, they want to know like a lot of information around those people. So every company have like their own kind of bespoke workflows, and what we do is we give them the research agents and the infra to build their own custom data pipelines that can go from whether that is for sales, marketing, or whether that is to actually just like enrich their entire customer base, or have certain actions happen based on their Salesforce table or the Snowflake data that they might be building on top of. And we want to be the intelligence layer that sits on top of their entire existing systems.
Yeah.
How we kind of fundamentally differ from like Perplexity or a bunch of other companies that are popping up is we really focus, and our goal is to really focus on company and people data. There's a lot of problems within company and people data that are fundamentally very different from just general web research. For example, when you're looking at like two different people with the same name, how do you know which one is who? And then there's certain proprietary data sets that contain information on people. And we want to just completely focus on that. And we want to hit the best. If we want to kind of pursue frontier, we want to do it on this realm. And we believe that this is an entirely different problem on its own, which is very different from just general web research or like collecting data at scale.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it sounds like from layman's terms that your guys' focus is more so on deepening company and people intelligence rather than just the broader intelligence that you'd be able to get from just scraping web data like, tools like Perplexity do. I think that's really interesting, and you guys are tapping into a unique market. I'm wondering too, from your guys' perspective as founders so far, I know you're onboarding new customers. What's the most exciting or surprising use case that you've seen 64 used for so far? Like you mentioned, it can be used by different personas and business units. So I'm interested to hear that.
Yeah, so there's a company, a different startup. They use our API actually to first find, just given a job listing, they use it to find the specific hiring manager within that company that actually posted that job listing. And so people that are recruiting for certain positions, they can go to their platform, our customer's platform, and they look at the job listing. And just from that, they know all the details about who's on that team. And then they also even know the hiring manager. So they can just reach out directly to the hiring manager instead of needing to go through some job portal on Workday. And so all that data is aggregated by our API.
And another interesting use case actually was, like how some platforms have subdomains as their kind of, like if you go to Salesforce and you work at Snowflake, so they'll probably have snowflake.salesforce.com or something like that to give you the login portal. For one of our customers, they were in the short-term rental management space. And what we did was we were able to find every single company using certain property management softwares. And some of these are really small companies in the middle of like really random countries like Thailand, Europe. And our research agents were able to not just go in from that subdomain and URL to actually finding those people. And I think one time we found somebody because he mentioned on his like Facebook post that, hey, I'm the owner of this company and I'm taking a week off to spend honeymoon with my wife or something like that. And we were able to use that information to find who that person was, who was like the owner of a really small real estate management company in like some European country.
Yeah, and to me that's really interesting because obviously I'm in sales. I use tools like Zoom Info and LinkedIn Sales Navigator, where obviously you can filter things out broadly by like seniority, what business unit they're working in, that sort of thing. But to be able to like enrich and go that deep into people and company intelligence, I can see how it'd be a massive advantage for people using the tool. So I think that's a really interesting use case that you just mentioned there. And then, one thing that sticks out to me too and reminds me about that a little is, I keep up with the posts you guys make on LinkedIn. I think you guys got a solid LinkedIn presence. And I remember one post you made, Sarth, about how you guys actually beat OpenAI in terms of shipping your guys' research agent a few weeks before theirs. I mean, massive accomplishment to you guys right there in its own. But can you walk me through, what that deployment was like, the chaos behind it, the decisions, and just the story?
Yeah, so this was early January when me and Chris were initially exploring this idea. One of our friends who were starting a company, they were trying to sell to psychiatrists, and they were doing a lot of like manual work trying to find who the psychiatrists were, checking out which organizations they were a part of, where they went to school, XYZ, and they came to us and they were like, can you guys solve this for us? And I actually was doing something very similar for another startup I was building before, where I was selling voice AI to dental clinics. So, I first got started with like trying to call these dental clinics and trying to find who the doctor was so I can reach out to them, or trying to sell to the receptionist directly, which didn't work out. So what I started doing instead was like I would go onto like Google Maps, look at dentists in my area, look at who those guys were, where they went to school, and do actual research on them manually. And these guys were actually doing the exact same thing. So when we hopped on a call with them, it immediately clicked that there's a lot of manual work being done that can just be automated in terms of research. And I've been building AI agents for almost like since the field existed, since GPT, the original like GPT 3.5 or GPT 3 came out. So since I already had experience with like some of the web scraping stuff and like working with LLMs. Our initial thesis was like, what if we just automate what we were doing as human beings and like step by step just build a research agent that does research accordingly. We did not know it'll be called deep research, but that's how we got started. Our goal was like we go and look at a web page, look at the results, and then kind of continue that process until we have enough context on people. So keep doing different types of searches, keep going into different data sources around people, and putting it all together and synthesizing it. So that's how we got started. We did not know it's going to be called deep research, and I think we started working on this in January. I think we shipped it out at least the first version early February, and if I'm not wrong, deep research dropped in like end of February. So we already had this in production with our customers. The problem was at that time LLMs were still kind of like nascent. I think we've seen a lot of improvements in terms of language models as a whole, and I still remember we used to have a lot of like issues with picking up wrong information and the LLMs hallucinating. It still exists, but I feel like it's dramatically lower than what it used to be. And obviously our systems have gotten better too. But I remember first time we used to have a lot of like wrong data, but like now I think we are slowly and steadily trickling towards like getting good performance.
And the Streamlit UI.
Yeah, we hacked a lot of like really bare bones systems to get things working. Yeah, good times.
Quite the story. Quite the story. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on the point of how LLMs have improved, and it's interesting to hear how you doing something manually, trying to identify how you can help this customer, led to that. So yeah, quite the background on that. And I guess like wondering, when you guys first started Sixtyfour, one thing that like always sticks out to me on your guys' LinkedIn, I feel like, is just how open you are about like the startup process. I'm wondering if there were like a set principles or philosophies that you guys kind of go by when you first started, because you guys do some interesting stuff. You have a push-up leaderboard in here. You take pictures with all of your customers in person, which I think is, a great habit. And, I've seen a picture on LinkedIn of beds in a U-Haul. So I'm wondering if this is all tied back to some greater philosophy that you guys started when you began the company.
We just want to be there for our customers, keep them happy.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, there's no philosophy around this. I think the only philosophy we kind of swear by is revenue and making sure customers are happy.
Yeah.
Net dollar retention being positive and net promoter rate being very high are the only two things we care about.
Only two things that matter.
Like what we want is on a month-to-month basis, we want net dollar retention to be positive. That's like the most important metric to us. Like NPS is a trailing metric of net dollar retention, but NDR needs to be positive on a month-to-month basis with all our existing accounts.
Nice. Well, yeah, looks like the NPS is
trending
off the charts right now. So whatever.
We'll see.
Keep taking those pictures.
NDR is more important because that's a leading indicator of NPS. But yeah.
Totally. Well, yeah, you guys are doing great work, and like I said, the LinkedIn presence has been really cool to watch. And other things that stuck out to me on there is Sarth. You made a post about Reddit suing Perplexity, and Chris saw you made a post about Giddy's switch up in terms of going from suing AI companies for data scraping to actually licensing data access to Perplexity. Wondering what that shift tells you guys about data ownership in terms of AI companies.
That's a great question. I think in terms of data ownership, the way we think about this is AI agents are just like any other human on the internet, right? If I'm deploying 1,000 AI agents to do something for me, they should have the same access that I have as an individual, right? It's just 10 times more, maybe 1,000 times more. We don't have necessarily very strict views on this. We don't really cross any, we don't break any systems, or we don't try to get into things that we are not supposed to.
Yeah.
So as a company, we've been very cognizant of that. We want to make sure any data we get is theoretically in public domain. Mm-hmm. And I think we've sworn by it. And if we do get some data, we make sure that we get it from providers that have licensed it directly. So we're just kind of getting into that license. But yeah, we don't really usually believe in breaking systems ourselves. But my personal thesis on this is anything that exists on the internet that I can have access to, I think my agent should also have access to.
Yeah, no, I completely think that's a fair point. And yeah, you guys are democratizing data access one step at a time. So kudos.
In a GDPR compliant way.
Yeah, exactly, right? Got to put that one in there. And yeah, wondering too, just this is a little bit different, but what part of the layers of technology that make AI applications work do you think is most misunderstood or underdeveloped? And probably answering my own question, you guys are focused on the orchestration layer, but if that's the case, why?
I think the reason why we decided to go for the orchestration layer, personally, is we just saw what our customers wanted, and then we realized that all of our customers, even if they were using us for data enrichment, spinning up a bunch of research agents, they were doing it in custom bespoke workflows that they already had, or they were trying to experiment with, whether that was sourcing people and then enriching them, or whether that was pulling somebody from the CRM, a list of people from the CRM and then enriching them and putting it back to the CRM. And we very quickly realized that if we build the orchestration layer itself, now we can handle a lot of really custom workflows, because not everybody is just doing basic enrichment, right? People are doing enrichment and they're doing certain actions on top of it. They're filtering our data. They're going from even if we go back to the original times when we were looking at subdomains to find people who want guesty booking, guesty websites and stuff like that. What we realized was let's say we find subdomains. That's the first step, right? That's one tier of enrichment. The second thing is, once you found these web pages, can you find who the companies are who own these websites? And the third step was finding the people at those companies, and the fourth step was finding their contact information, and then the fifth step is importing into the CRM. So it's all a sequential data orchestration process.
Yeah.
That is just amplified with AI agents. And that was one of the key insights we unlocked towards the end of our Y Combinator batch. Before this, we were trying to be an enrichment company and a data company, and we very quickly realized that if we wanted to serve all the customers that we have onboarded, the current approach wasn't correct, and we wanted something that was more flexible in terms of solving customer problems, especially enterprise customers' problems.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. So, is it fair to say that you thought that layer is the area which tasks could be most streamlined?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, mostly, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, makes sense. You see the most manual effort done. Why not have an AI agent or AI take care of it, right?
Yeah, and as a startup, you want to be deeply embedded into companies' entire pipelines, right? If you are, a lot of the AI applications that are being built, a lot of them are just like point solutions, right? And the problem with point solutions is if you only solve one part of the problem, retention is really hard, customers don't stick around. But if you own the entire end-to-end process, now you become deeply embedded into a company's entire work system, right? And I think that's the correct place to be for any AI company.
Totally. Yeah, handling the end-to-end process is, crucial, like you said, for ensuring customer success and making sure that, you're keeping that retention rate up. So
I'd be pretty like just for you guys too, right? Even at Snowflake, right?
Yeah.
Because you guys become so embedded into companies, right? It makes the entire company much more valuable because you guys own the entire data layer for companies.
Exactly.
We want to do the same, but for intelligence layers that touch people in community.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's a fair comparison, and a little bit different, but what I'm seeing is, governance starting to be hardwired into companies. One of you guys made a post about it too, but like OpenAI's Restructure, it's basically giving their safety committee veto power over the models that they, release. Wondering if you guys think this legal structural oversight is going to become, a commonality, or if this was just a one-off reaction to public pressure.
I mean, I think for the foundational companies like Anthropic, the B Corp, OpenAI is transitioning to a public benefit corporation as well. So I think it's like the foundational companies are dealing with something different. Like there is in the AI like safety community like this notion of like existential risk, like what is the probability that all the humans die in some super intelligent system? And so they're just trying to mitigate that. I think. We are like an AI application company, so this doesn't really affect us at all.
Yeah.
Like we are just revenue optimized. If data relates to revenue, we want to be there.
Yeah.
So we're just about converting data to revenue.
Totally. Yeah, so some of those larger corporations where they might implement an AI safety committee, we don't have one of those at 64 yet.
Not yet.
No. Once we start dealing with super intelligence and we're like the sales super intelligence system for companies, then that might get scary.
Seriously, keep an eye out for these guys.
People will be bending over backwards to pay our customers, and that's maybe too much customer obsession.
Definitely. No, I mean, one thing I want to ask you guys too, just your opinion on it, like, if you were to advise policymakers today, in terms of one practical regulation or taking away a regulation that's already in place right now that would actually help startups and AI tech companies, what would that be?
Yeah, answer to
for regulation in the startup scene?
Yeah, whether that's like putting, forth a regulation or peeling back what's already been put in place.
I mean, I think, like there's so many startups around compliance now. Like you have Delve, Rippling, Central, Haven for taxes. Like most of like the legal compliance aspect of things are like taken care of by other startups. And so, I mean, regulations are actually a great place for startups to start existing, to like help other people comply with those.
Yeah.
And so, frankly, like all those problems from our perspective have been abstracted out.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's things we get in.
Are you asking more so like what regulations the government should pass on AI safety and just like AI systems as a whole?
Yeah, I mean,
so like
if there's anything specific that would like help startups grow faster or just like broaden the ecosystem, I think you just brought up a fair point. Like with certain regulations being passed, it actually opens the window for other AI companies to exist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's kind of like a broad question.
Yeah, I feel like so far, I mean, we haven't had any problems with anything to do with regulations, right?
Like the only compliance thing we run into is like GDPR compliance and like certain like data security standards.
Yeah.
And then that's pretty standard, right?
Yeah.
Every enterprise company has to go through that.
Yeah.
And then one of our like customers, like there was a big sales loft hack, I think, recently. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, people are just more sensitive about their data.
Totally.
So I think like just, I don't know, getting better cybersecurity standards in place might be more useful, actually.
There's always that data breach every now and then that's got people freaking out, and then you got to convince them that.
Yeah, but I don't know how that relates to like policymakers, right?
Yeah, I think policymaking honestly is just a great breeding ground for startups, because every time you pass a new regulation, that's like a new hurdle for other people to go through, and so there's a good company to be built there.
Yeah, as long as we don't like stop things and like stop AI progress.
Yeah, we should be good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I think you guys are onto it right there. And just in terms of AI, ML development as a whole, if there was one prediction that each of you guys could make within the 5 to 10 years, of what's going to happen next, that you can put all your money on, or at least a fair portion of it, right? If there's anything that sticks out to you.
I think to me, the way I think about this is I feel like LLMs are still like, they're good, but like as somebody who works with them on a daily basis, like I think they work really well on like maybe ChatGPT to get things going and like asking questions, but like getting them ready in production systems is really hard. So I think we need like another kind of like a fundamental change in which models are trained. I think that would unlock a lot more value. That's what I think personally. But again, I'm not an AI researcher, so I may be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think within 10 years, I would be surprised if unemployment rates are below 50%.
Interesting.
Like, I would be surprised if they're below 50% in 10 years.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, well, we might have to put that one on a shirt or something.
Yeah.
That's a big claim. But yeah, I mean, I can't say it's completely unrealistic. I mean, like every other day I'm starting to see like more and more companies come out with something that's going to completely just take away someone's job. And I'll be honest, I'm not even going to say who the founder was, but I did talk to a founder the other day, and I was like, and is the vision for your product for this business, your persona, to be able to make them more productive, or are you guys eventually just going to replace them altogether? And she was like, the person was like, yeah, I'm not going to lie, like eventually it's going to replace altogether. So yeah, you see where it's headed.
I think it's interesting, right? Because I mean, right now there's a lot of coding systems in place that help us like ship code much faster, but we still need people to manage it.
Yeah.
Right. I am not sure how that's going to pan out in the next 5 to 10 years. I do think one of the benefits of language models and just like AI systems as a whole is we need less people to get more done.
Yeah.
Right? How that impacts economy and unemployment rates, again, I'm not sure. I'm not an expert to speak on it.
Yeah, time will tell.
Yeah, only time will tell. But I think with every technological shift, there has been changes, right? Like when we went from horse carriages to cars, or from even before that, right? Things change every 100 years. So far, we've been just fine. I hope we'll be just fine next time.
Yeah, no, that's a fair assumption. And yeah, I mean, taking a little bit of a pivot, you guys were involved in one of the most well-known startup accelerators there is, Y Combinator or YC, which is notoriously known for helping startups scale. Wondering, through your guys' experience, I know, interesting enough, between the two of you guys, you applied 10 times. Yeah. So that was interesting enough in itself. But from your guys' most recent experience, if there was one word to describe that experience, what would that be and why?
I think it'd be incredible. YC is just incredible. Gave us a lot of opportunities. I think we won't be here without YC, so we really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, Y Combinator is, in one word, incredible. They really do focus on value. Like, I think from the outside, everybody thinks it's about, hype and, you're just going to join and then raise millions of dollars afterwards. But, when you're in YC, their core obsession is with customer success and revenue. Like, how much value are you delivering to your customers and how much are you making from them? Like, that is all that they care about. They only care about value. They only care about customers. They only care about revenue. Yeah.
And I think they kind of deeply ingrained that into our heads. And that's what we've been focused on.
So every day we repeat to ourselves revenue.
Yeah, well, it's clear that that's stuck. And yeah, those are two great foundational principles to build a business off of. So kudos to you guys. And, I know from the outside, YC is known for compressing years of startup experience into just a few months. Do you guys think, there was any sort of pivotal mindset that helped ingrain into you, or, any specific lesson that you learned from that experience?
I mean, they were really focused on value and growth. Mm-hmm. Like every week they're like, what is your 2-week revenue goal? And have you hit it? Why or why not? And like, that is the only thing they ask you. Yeah. Like even now we go back to office hours and it's like, are you growing? If so, if you are, great. How can you expand on that? If not, why are you not? And then how do you unblock yourself to grow more? Basically every conversation is that nature. They just repeat that endlessly.
Yeah.
And you'd assume, because YC is filled with technical founders, it's about building. But surprisingly, they teach founders not to build and like to kind of grow first, kind of like build and grow at the same time. But growth is like probably the primary key, like KPI.
Yeah, like growth matters more than building, because if you build a product that nobody uses, again, like you don't have revenue, you don't have customers. The point of a business is to service customers and solve a problem. And so again, it just comes all down to revenue. Like you should always be selling.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting to hear how they have you focused on, I guess 2 weeks isn't like a crazy short-term goal or anything in terms of like measuring revenue change, but it's like how much revenue realistically, like for a startup, can change in that time incrementally over time. But I think that's like a good mindset that they ingrain into founders. So appreciate you guys bringing that up, and wondering, too, like how you think YC's approach to AI startups has changed within the last 2 to 3 years, or maybe just over the years in general. And like for myself, I mean, I did a little bit of research, and like 10 years ago, it doesn't seem like you're seeing near the amount of AI startups, in YC as you're seeing today. It's like, it feels like, all of them are. But yeah, it's like if you guys can speak to that at all.
I mean, I think if you think about AI startups as a whole, like just the entire venture capital business is like completely deploying money, just like at this point only AI startups, or mostly AI startups, right? So I don't think YC is that different. I think all the VCs, like if you look at any of the big firms and their investments, they're mostly deploying money in these AI startups. I was actually reading something yesterday where they were like, somebody was complaining on Twitter about how they're not funding Indian startups anymore. Or like somebody was making a claim that they're not funding Indian founders anymore, which is wrong because I'm one of those Indian founders, right? But I think the fundamental shift has happened because before they would fund companies in international markets that were solving different problems. A lot of like large YC companies came out of like India or South America and all these different places. But I think over the last few batches, what we've seen is like most of the companies are focused to selling to enterprises or the American market, and they're mostly AI startups that are selling here. So I think that's where the market is headed, clearly, right? I think funding is kind of consolidated into like just the AI startup ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, totally. And you think it's more a pivot to AI startups that are selling to enterprises as well, you mentioned?
Not necessarily enterprises, but AI startups as a whole. And also, like, if you think about founders, like, what type of problems are people working on in 2025? If you don't hear the word AI, they're probably living in the stone age, right? Because, I mean, one of the claims is that the entirety of the software stack would be rewritten with AI in the next few years. And if that is true, then any software that people are buying, whether that is in foreign markets or solving like non-enterprise problems, but like some sort of problems, should fundamentally be AI first, right? If you kind of buy into the thesis that every software will be rewritten in AI. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's pretty standard.
Definitely. Well, yeah, I think that's a fair way to think about it. And along that note, I'm wondering for your guys' experience and your thoughts on YC's approach. It seems like from the outside point of view, it's speed, experimentation, growth at all costs. If that's compatible or at odds with building deep AI infrastructure.
That's a great question. I think when it comes to deep AI infrastructure, right? Like ultimately, like because we're not like an infrastructure and company as per se, right? We're not really building like memory layers. We're not really building like super deep and like foundational models. Right? We're not training things. So I think on the application layer, YC's approach still is pretty valid, right? Everything has to be data driven. Everything has to be like if you're building something, you must have a clear reason as to why you're building this, right? So like we were looking at one of the features for our platform that would make everything easier to build these data orchestration platform pipelines with like just chat interface or like some other sort of interface. And we were talking about this, and the reason why we want to build this is because we have the data that our customers wanted. Yeah. So even for us, even if like something is like kind of like very deep data infrastructure heavy, we only want to touch those things once we have enough data that our customers wanted. Mm-hmm. Like when we first started building our enrichment API, our goal was like to first get a few customers and make sure they're really happy before we actually make it better. So as I said, in this new system, getting an MVP is pretty easy. Because you can like spin up a bunch of Cloud Code instances or Cursor and like get an initial MVP out. Yeah. But then you only want to put an effort into that MVP to turn that into a production system if you have the deep data to kind of back that hey, people want this, so let me put in more time and like really specialize on this. And that's the reason why we kind of like start specializing on this intelligence stuff around like people and company data. We wouldn't have done that if we had no data. And I think the way you get that data is rapid experimentation, like doing a bunch of testing and talking to people and talking to customers and servicing those customers and then seeing where things are faltering and making that improvement. So I think YC's advice is pretty much stands. I don't know if it applies to foundational model labs, but it definitely applies to like application layer companies.
Yeah, but also I think it's important to remember like OpenAI came out of YC research. Like YC was the first investor in OpenAI, and there's a YC ecosystem fund called Pioneer Fund, which was one of the first checks into Anthropic. So all the foundational model companies like still trace back to YC, and they're very focused on still AI infra, like Mem0, for example, is another company that recently raised their Series A. Yeah. It's a YC-backed company. So they're still very focused on infrastructure stuff as well as funding AI apps.
Yeah.
Like in our batch, there was a company called Sigildry Technology. So Chad Rigetti founded one of Rigetti Computing, and he was one of the big quantum computing experts, and he was in our batch, and he raised a lot of money to build Sigildry, which is another quantum computing deep tech company. So they fund everything. YC funds deep research companies and funds AI apps. They're all across the stack.
Yeah. Totally.
I'm actually curious if they give different feedback or different pieces of advice to different companies, because for us, obviously, they're rapid experimentation, revenue, growth, right? I'm not sure if the same kind of advice applies to a foundation model company. Yeah,
a company, a friend of ours, they recently had a 9-figure cash offer, and the advice they got from YC was hey, you guys are a really deep foundational bet. You guys have discovered something really valuable with how models work and how you can modify them. In 10 years, those 9 figures will look like pocket change.
Yeah.
So you should wait for that $100 billion exit of these 9 figures.
Yeah.
And that's really how YC makes their money. So, they even if we exited for $100 million, YC doesn't care. YC only cares if you become worth $100 billion.
Totally.
Or $1 billion even. And so that's why, our friend who got the 9-figure cash offer is no. Yeah. He's waiting for the 11-figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the fundamental advice that YC gives to these companies is very dependent on what the type of company is, right? The advice we got is more relevant to what you said, but I feel the deep infra companies probably get different advice.
Yeah. I mean, and for what you guys have said, it sounds like they do a good job of maintaining the relationship even after, you've gone through that, couple month process. And kind of, what you pointed out too, even with deep AI infrastructure, the proof is there, they've supported those companies in their journey. And I think what it kind of ties back to is, what you mentioned earlier is what they really preach on is, yes, rapid iteration, but if it makes sense for the customer too, right? Don't just do something to make the product or, platform cooler, so to speak. So that's kind of what sticks out to me when you guys talk about all that. But yeah, appreciate you, cluing me into the, secrets of YC. Not really any secrets. But yeah, guys, I want to, finish out by just talking about, what's next for Sixtyfour. You guys are, onboarding customers left and right, busy over here. But I'm wondering, what's the next big product milestone for Sixtyfour within the next 6 to 12 months?
That's a great question. I'd be lying if I said that we have a specific product version in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Probably the reason why is because we want to listen to our customers and think about product from that perspective, rather than coming up with ideas that we want to kind of push the next 6 to 12 months. Because again, you want to build things people want, and sometimes when you come up with things they're not necessarily things people might want. But there are a few things that we want to focus on, or we think we would want to double down our resources on. One is our core enrichment engine. I think the way we think about this is we want to start hiring people who are experts in just AI agents and building different agent or different agentic systems, and then kind of trying to push the frontier on what is people and company data.
Yeah.
So one of our friends at Google was working on this problem. With the little cards that you see on Google search results around when you search on somebody's name, especially if they're famous. They were working on that and trying to expand this to more people. But very quickly they realized that it's very hard to do that because naming collisions is a big problem, or finding wrong pieces of information is a big problem. Sometimes people don't even have information on the internet. So and I think our next bet, which we have data to kind of prove that this is what our customers want, is going to be improving our agentic systems and building our enrichment engine the best in the world. And I feel that is going to be our core differentiating edge that's going to take us from being a $30 million company that we are right now to becoming a multi-billion-dollar company.
Totally.
Yeah, I also think one other product feature that people have been trained on is just a chat interface at this point. In 2025, people don't really want to be clicking around systems. They want to just natural language query the entire system and then have everything work for them.
Exactly.
So I think that's also something on our product roadmap over the next 2 months or so, to really build out just a chat interface to the entire platform, and then you can just communicate with that, and that will do all the work for you within the system. I think that'll be a really big game changer to our existing customers, and our future customers will really like that.
Yeah, and then one last thing that we kind of have evidence to support that people need this is just integrating with their core systems, whether that is a Snowflake integration or whether that is a Salesforce integration. So I think the next 6 to 12 months is mostly going to be us like working deeply closely with customers and like building these systems out for them and making sure that they're happy and they're satisfied.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like, most of the focus is going to be on continuing to enhance product quality rather than reinvent the wheel, right? Like you guys already know you have something that works. It's about, continuing to, add on to that in terms of what's going to make the customer more likely to stay with you guys. So yeah, couldn't agree more that you guys are doing things the right way. And I guess more along the notes of the longer term vision for Sixtyfour, like do you guys want to, be one platform, a suite of AI agents, or maybe something even broader? Like what does Sixtyfour look like years down the line?
That's a great question. So the way we think about data is we start off with like lower level use cases, right? Sales, marketing is the starting point for us. But once we have a lot of data, we theoretically know where markets are moving. We theoretically know what people are doing. Like we could become a Palantir-esque intelligence company. And I feel like in the next few years, if you ask me what we want it to be, the goal is to go take our data orchestration engine and kind of apply it to not just sales and marketing problems, but take it out and apply it to like much bigger problems that the world is trying to solve.
Yeah, we want to be the central intelligence platform for people.
Yeah.
So why call it the CIA when you could call it Sixtyfour?
I love that, dude. This guy's got things left and right that we've been throwing on shirts. I love it. I think that's a really strong goal for the company, and yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you want to continue to just make it solving bigger challenges, right? Not just sales and marketing, but as it applies to the broader ecosystem. So I think those are ambitious and strong goals for the company.
Yeah, and the reason you want to start with sales and marketing is fundamentally the easiest problem to solve, where you can kind of make some mistakes and fuck up a little bit without actually having a horrible experience with the customers. But then as your data gets better and you push fundamental benchmarks on research agents and making sure like the data is getting really good, then you can tap into more complicated and more high value problems, and that's where we want to be, like a data orchestration engine for that.
It makes sense. And you guys might have already answered this a little bit. You were talking about doing more hiring in this regard, but wondering how you plan to leverage the next wave of AI models
in terms of like building things for us or for our customers.
Yeah, both.
I think for us, any improvements really help us because like we can be a lean team and we can build really quickly. And I'm fundamentally a big believer of like super lean teams. And we want to make sure as we add more people, we don't like become a massive company now where like each feature, each individual change takes months to happen. I've seen some of that with some of my other friends who work at big companies. Thankfully, I never worked at a big company. That was the reason why I never wanted to work for a big company, is because you move faster. So as we scale, how do we kind of keep maintaining some of that speed, and how do we kind of maybe even like hire less, but have really good people who are in charge of really critical features, and giving them the tools with these new LLM improvements to do a lot more. I think that would be really incredible for us. And for our customers, I think as LLMs get better, our systems will get better. And we kind of directly benefit from any improvements that happen in this space.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, being able to use it to keep the team lean and then also, improve the customer experience, right? Or like two of the more foundational ways to leverage it moving forward. So yeah, definitely agree with you guys on that there. And a little bit different, but wondering if there's something that both of you guys are personally proud of in terms of Sixtyfour, and something that, people who aren't part of the team might not know about the company. I think one thing that sticks out to me is, you guys have a really good culture going on in here. And I know a lot of people that work for startups, and, they mentioned it was just like so fast paced to the point where it just wasn't enjoyable to work there. People are constantly on their ass, which I'm sure you guys do to some degree, but like not to the point where it's like you guys hate each other, right? So yeah, wondering if there's something like specific that, other people don't know about the team here at Sixtyfour that you're proud of.
I think right now there's a big push on 996.
Yeah.
Right? That's the most prominent SF kind of like Twitter post.
Yeah.
But we, on our end, actually, the way we approach this is every single person we hire and bring onto the team we want to be really close friends with them. And the reason why is, if I think about the people I trust the most, or Chris trusts the most, is our friends.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that really helps in that first thing is we trust each other a lot. Second thing is it makes the work a lot more enjoyable. The minute you have a bad hire, everybody in the office becomes sad, and we've had that happen before, and it's not a good thing, right? So we want to make sure like any person we hire in terms of culture is a good fit for us and our team, and accepts us the way we are, because we're founders, we're normal human beings, right? So that's culture fit has been like one of the big things that we've been really thinking about when we make a decision on hiring. And so far, we're really happy with the team. Every single person on our team, we really enjoy working with, and because we also give them a lot of ownership into their work, they come here and they're really happy and like enjoying everything, So, and we make it more fun because we're all young. We do things like random push-up challenges. We're doing like Boba runs,
Yeah.
I think that really helps everybody to be happy, not just like them, but also us, right?
Yeah. I mean, we believe in 9-7-7. So 9-6.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
I'm just kidding.
We don't not ownership, none of this. Like,
Being able to park a U-Haul in SF.
That too.
That's pretty impressive, bro.
That was actually a chat, like a VO3 post.
No. Yeah.
It was like
It wasn't our actual.
It wasn't an actual U-Haul.
No way. Wait, are you serious?
Yeah, it was like.
Bro, I think you like got everyone on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LMs are really good at generating.
Our teammate does all the LinkedIn posting. We don't.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Hey, whoever's doing it needs to keep it up.
Yeah.
Man. It's a creative way to promote it.
What was that one thing which I was like thinking about? Dude, I lost my chain of thought.
No, you're good.
I had such a great point, and I was like,
Hey, if it comes in, we'll get back in.
It's okay.
But no, I just have one more question for you guys. So more in terms of encompassing 64 in the future and how you aim to revolutionize the market. When you look 5 years into the future, how do you hope 64 has changed the way that companies and people interact with knowledge and intelligence?
The way we think about this is every LLM system would need information.
Yeah.
On people and companies are fundamentally a part of any business, right? They're part of anything that you're doing, and we want to kind of be that layer for intelligence, I would say. When me and Chris were talking about like, if AGI actually happens, what would be that one thing which it would be lacking, where we could like really have an edge over, and that was like information on people and companies. What else was there? It was mostly it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you guys are going to play a big role in terms of like the evolution of AI and knowledge and intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you started out with sales and marketing, but the goal is to encompass the broader area of it as well, take over the CIA.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, I mean, those were the questions I have for you. I want to thank you again for a great conversation. I appreciate you guys breaking down the story before you started 64 and what led to the fruition of the company, and really the challenges that you guys are tackling today that existing companies are yet to address. And yeah, if you guys are interested in keeping up with 64, Sarth, Christopher, the rest of the team, they're making great LinkedIn posts, making a great product over here. I'm going to link all that information in the show notes. You can find me on LinkedIn and X at Adam Kaniz. And until next time, this has been another episode of the AI Ventures Podcast.
Thank you.